What a nice position here. White has an extra pawn in the rook endgame. But how to win? Black is going to keep his rook here. Keep an eye on this pawn, of course. The moment black moves the rook somewhere, white just opens the rook and queens his pawn, so that's never going to work. So black is going to keep his rook somewhere here on these squares, and his king has to stay probably on g7 and h7. And can white win this position? Usually, actually, white cannot. But why white cannot win this position? Because if he tries to get closer with the king and protect this pawn temporarily so that he can open the rook, black is just going to give checks forever and then return back to the a file. And now white's rook is stuck here, stuck a little, and white cannot do anything. White cannot play rook b8, c8 or d8 because he loses this pawn. And this is a pretty simple draw actually, but in this initial position white has a wonderful chance. He has a great move. How do we find this move? Well, simply we have to give each move a chance. So white has some king moves which are quite close to each other. He might try to play one of them and the game is going to be drawn. And white also has some moves with this rook, this move and this move. If you go to b8, black takes and pretty much we can finish our analysis here. But if we move our rook to c8, threatening to queen the pawn, black absolutely has to capture our pawn, and then we should stop here for a few seconds and understand before evaluating the position as drawn. We have to see this little move, rook c7. Black has to trade the rooks, and then we get the pawn endgame where our king is on c7, black's king is on g7. With these two pawns, interestingly enough, this position is always winning for white. Black is going to lose his pawn by force. Let's see how this works. Check. Trade. White is coming to d7 or d6 and simply waiting on these two squares until black lets him come to e6. There's nothing black can do. Black has only one square from which he can control on this important e6 square. White is simply waiting d7, d6 until black moves his king. And now the same thing is valid again. White will wait on these two squares until black lets him come to f6. And white, once we are here, now we are doing the same thing one more time. We are waiting on f6 and f7 until black lets us pick up the pawn. Once we take the pawn, we have the g pawn, king in front of the pawn, and when our king is in front of the pawn and on the 6th rank, it is always winning regardless of the position of black king, as long as we don't have a5 and h5 pawns. These two pawns cannot win, as we know, but any other pawn will win. How do we win here? Now, if it would be black to move, he would have to move his king away and then we can just promote. But with white to move, we have to actually, with more central pawns, it doesn't matter which way we go. But with our g pawn, it is a little important. We cannot win by playing king f6. That's somewhat tricky because black has a great reply here. He goes king to h7. And now white still can go king f7, transpose to the initial position and do the right move, which is king h6, after which we want to come here, which makes it very easy to promote the pawn. Black has to play this, and we just push, and come here. Black resigns. Let's go back now to this position and see what happens if white goes the wrong way. Black comes here, and now white is, let's say, a little bit hasty, and he decides to push g6, hoping for king g8 when he wins after g7 and king f7. But in this position, black goes king h8. This move is wonderful. And now suddenly the position is a draw. White cannot go to f7 because of the stalemate. If white pushes g7, which is the only other normal move, king g8, king g6. And again, we have a draw. So this is the initial position, yes. And white can just simply trade the rooks here. Another interesting thing is that without this pawn on g6, if you suppose that this pawn doesn't exist, then white cannot win the game actually. This pawn helps white. Let's try to somehow make this position just to show you how it works. So let's suppose that we have this position. I made some ridiculous moves, but black just waits. There's nothing white can do against these two pawns. I actually had once a position like this. It was against Yuri Kuzubov. He's a very strong grandmaster from Ukraine. I was really happy about getting a great endgame against him, but although I was 2 pawns up, I couldn't win the game. He was simply waiting, and there's absolutely nothing white can do. If we move the rook at any point, black just collects the pawn, and as we know, black king is in front of the pawn and he easily holds the position. White can only try to play something like this, enter the pawn endgame, and now thanks to the absence of this pawn here, the position is an easy draw.